First of all, since I have been involved with planning and putting together such conferences, I just want to congratulate Nomi. It's not a small task. It requires a lot of love and care and continuity, and I think you've done a wonderful job, and I hope we continue with it. It's late. Everybody's tired. I am too. So I'll try to be brief. I will not show you a lot of my work. You saw a few images of what Professor Moyosef showed, because we designed with other architects, we designed the Hadassah building that we're opening literally this week or beginning of next week, and also tomorrow, parts of it. So it's really very imminent. So with that, I'll just jump in and say, I decided not to talk about anything that's too large, not to talk about concepts. I would much prefer, frankly, to talk about process. It's something that really interests me. Process is something that impacts the product more than anything else. But that, certainly, I'm very interested in other parts of it. Centers of excellence, the idea of culture, we've heard that from some of the other architects. I decided to be specific and talk about the inpatient room, and very specifically the semi-private room. Well, first of all of us knows what it means to be ill. Our physical sensitivities are exposed. In fact, our psyche and our physiology are under attack. Probably the greatest challenge I know for an architect, and our office deals with many different kinds of building types, is that trying to convert or produce an environment that can enhance and improve the healing, the whole healing process. In effect, the inpatient room that we're used to is large with a number of beds in it. I decided to talk specifically about the semi-private room because if you now check what's happening in the United States, the American Health Association tells you very clearly they will only endorse private beds, which is quite a surprise. They will not build a new hospital if it's not only built with private beds. But there is a big world out there. In many places, we've worked in India, in Africa, in Europe, and I can tell you that a well-designed semi-private room is a major, including Israel, a major step forward if we can produce a really high-quality semi-private bed. But the secret course has to be with the need to echo the ideas that we have in the private room. So what I'm going to do is try to very quickly show you a few ideas. What goes forward? That? Okay. Everybody knows that in the private room there are three areas. You've seen these slides over and over again 100 times. We have to worry about the patient, give him enough area. We have to worry about the healthcare giver, which is significant, how he gets into the room, how he provides it enough room for him to provide more procedures than normally takes place in the room, and of course space for the family. The private room, of course, if we analyze that, the major issue, of course, is privacy. And that's something we have to think about very carefully when we get into the semi-private room, because very few rooms do that. We have to, again, provide more space for procedures, family, hospitality, more individual control by the patient over his environment, something that we don't think about because if he wants to, God forbid, open a window, that can mess up your air conditioning system. But in America today, there's a clear direction that you have to allow the patient much more control over his environment, and of course a sense of well-being. Typical private single patient room in any form does all of those things. It provides a place whether it's a chair or a couch, to open up. You have to provide connection with the outside world. Your connection with a television, with the internet is all essential for the patient today, not only for the patient, but for the visitor to enjoy that as well. All of these facilities are very important, and of course infection control, which is also very important and much easier to deal with in a private room. Typical room, this happens to be the single room that we did in Hadassah. The semi-private room has to do all of those things too. We have to increase the privacy, and that really is our major issue. As I said, space for procedures, family, infection control, sense of well-being, companionship. I was very surprised to see when we started Hadassah Hospital and we began to do research with the people who are the users. To my great surprise, we found that the majority of people preferred a companion in the room. And there's something very interesting about that. People simply feel that the other patient is much sicker than he is. Really a shame. And because he's less sick, he's thinking about somebody else. It takes his mind away from himself and has a big impact. There's better control, because if that patient in the middle of the night gets up and goes to the bathroom and falls, there's another patient in the room to call the nurse. So effectively, you do have control, and there's a lot to be said for a semi-private room if we can find a way to improve the quality of what we normally had. And of course, as you see, we can create a more compact apartment because we have more patients in a smaller area. As I said, better control over the patient. The department is cheaper to build and, of course, cheaper to maintain. So those are not small issues today when we're talking about the money. So again, I said we have to echo these ideas. If we look at the standard inpatient room that's semi-private, and it doesn't matter whether the lavatories and the showers are inboard or outboard, because it's the same story. Let's analyze that room for 1 minute. Somebody comes to visit one patient, his rear end is in the face of the other patient. If some patient puts his hand out, he can touch the other patient. Procedures can't be done. There's no privacy. One particular patient has a window. One patient doesn't have a window. One person watches television. It disturbs the other patient. And I can go on and on and on. So these are the problems of this room. So for me, I say this room is inappropriate. We should not be building these rooms anymore. If we look at a typical room, this is the same thing. Again, the same story with the inboard situation. Again, you can provide cabinets for each patient, very important, televisions. But again, this room, no matter what configuration, for me, is unacceptable. What is acceptable, and we have to examine the length of the facade that we're dealing with. In America, if you take a standard private room, it's usually 4 to 4.5 meters, using up 4 to 4.5 meters of the facade. That's expensive because the facades, the exterior elevation is very expensive. So we have to find a way to be able to reduce that somehow. And we've developed over the last 20 years some 35, 40 different versions of how we can take that semi-private room and provide within 4 to 4.5 meters, again, a lot more privacy by creating beds one opposite the other with a room for a family member to sleep over. This is one that we actually worked on in Kaplan Hospital. This is another version that we're doing overseas, less successful because the bed that's more inside has no window. The other solution, of course, in these rooms you can convert, and that's happening more and more in hospitals. We're finding a way to very often use parts of the room for family members to stay over and actually turning it into a facility that becomes a small living room. And if you want to put these together, sometimes using, I've only chosen a few of these samples, by using inboard and outboard lavatories, you can within 4.05 meters produce a space of facade. You can produce space for 2 beds, and again, considerably improve the quality of the privacy of the patient and the more procedures that take place. Again, in most of these, you don't have two windows. A new one that we've just developed for a hospital we're doing in Latvia does exactly what I want to do, again in 405, and strangely enough in less than 30 square meters. Two completely separate areas servicing the patient from the right-hand side in both cases, with curtains that go around it, with couches for a family to sleep in, each with its own window. I'm referring to the one on the right more than that. Televisions that are in the location that the members of the family who come to visit can also appreciate the television and participate in the experience of seeing what's going on in the world. Cabinets, of course. Obviously, the only thing that's really shared in this case is the lavatory and the showers, which again, I would strongly suggest that one gets rid of the idea of curtains in the showers, because that's a great place. The microbiologists scream at us because of the amount of infection that's passed on by that. And today there are systems of using glass that can fold and open to allow a wheelchair into the showers and don't convey that. One other word that just occurred to me lately, there's a lot of talk about copper in hospitals, because copper is the one material that doesn't bring infection, doesn't convey the infection from one place to the other. And we're now beginning to use mezuzot in our rooms, so because when people touch it and kiss it, that becomes a very common way of passing on infection. And now we're using more and more copper in the building. Handrails and elevators, whatever you touch, let me tell you, that is the place where you don't want to touch. I'm going to jump to Hadassah. I'm not going to show you a lot of work. This is the building we're opening this week, but I wanted to show you the inpatient room that we did there. Professor Mo-Yosef did this morning. If you look at the facade, there's insides and outsides, projections, injections within the facade. And besides providing some sun protection, the idea behind this primarily was and we go to a typical floor, which are two triangles, and we go to the single room. This might be interesting because on the, I don't know if I have that area there is a healing garden. I'll just say a word about that at the end. A healing garden, which is about 250 square meters. I'll show you the section in a minute. The idea is that all of those 4 healing gardens are built over technical levels. And the reason for that is that we can get real trees in there with enough room for our roots so they're alive and produces better quality of oxygen in the building and a real environment for patients to be in and their family. It's like a valve in this culture. If you go to Germany, nobody ever goes to a hospital if somebody's in an operation. If you go to Israel, 15 to 20 family members come, and you need a place, a valve, so people can really participate. This is the room we did at Hadassah. It uses 6 meters of facade, which is smaller than America, but larger than we usually do. Again, in a little bit more detailed drawing, it shows you that. Both have windows, both sections have windows, complete privacy. And there's a central area in the middle. A quick presentation of something we did early on, just so you can begin to see. If you want to talk to a patient, you can. This room has not only cabinets, a safe, exactly like a hospital, like a hotel. It has room and a space for a refrigerator, despite the fact that we have kashrut in this country, and that complicates life a lot. A place for a family member to sit down with his laptop and work within the room, and enough room around the bed for more procedures, however you do it, and the option of being able to talk with your partner in the room if you want to. And if you don't want to, you close the curtain and you have privacy. That's effectively what one sees when you see the other. The 2 windows in this case, we've actually used in the room what we call the 3rd window, which is a large photograph of some place within Israel, again to create a different feeling of interest and keep the patient involved in other stuff than himself. This is actually a photograph early on of the sample room. The day rooms, you can't really talk about inpatient rooms if you don't talk a little bit about the leisure spaces, day rooms we call them. Again, the healing gardens are very important. That's the environment I'd like to see within a hospital for a patient to be able to get to. And that's what we've done in Hadassah. We provided some 200, as I said, 250 to 300 square meters with real trees where a patient can sit in privacy with family members and get away from the hospital environment. You can see in the section here that all of those healing gardens on the left-hand side of the slide sit over technical areas, interstitial spaces that allow us to really plant trees and take care of them properly. Another early on sketch of that. Two quick images of this building. One is the corner of the building of the triangle. This is the atrium. Before we had people in it, now we have people in it. And I just want to leave you with one quick thought. I was told I had 8 to 9 minutes. I hope I'm within time. If you forget everything I've told you, it's not important. Just remember one thing, that the semi-private room is a legitimate, cost-effective alternative, despite what we're hearing in the world, if it's properly designed. On the condition, I said, that we do not eliminate the special qualities of a private room. Thank you.